Class, what is up? Welcome to Section 1.3, Part 2. So this is still order of operations, and we can definitely tell that because if we look at our learning targets, we're still looking to apply the order of operations. The only difference now is that instead of giving you a numerical expression or numeric expression, we're going to give you variable expressions. Okay? Well, what does that mean? If we go back to our vocabulary, hopefully we remember that when we look at something like this, 4x plus 5, well, do we call that numeric or do we call that variable? We call that a variable expression. All right? This is a variable expression because it has numbers, operations, and then the big part, and variables. Alright? So I'll get out of the way there so you guys can read that. Hopefully that makes sense. And so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be working to evaluate these variable expressions. Okay? So, we've done something kind of similar to this in a previous lesson, but now we're getting a little bit more in detail. We have a 4x plus 5, and if we remember, when we have a 4 next to an x or directly in front of the x, what operation is occurring? We know that that's multiplication. Okay? So when I go and I want to replace my x with a 3, right? I want to evaluate 4x plus 5 when x is equal to 3. Well, that means that I need to replace my x with a 3. And so I tend to write it like this. What did I do? Basically, I had a 4 and I left a space for an x by putting parentheses, and then I added a 5 to it. And then I knew that I had to put a 3 inside of my parentheses. Okay? So let's write the step for that. What did we do? Well, we substituted 3 in 4x. And when I do my explanations, I like to give a because. All right, so substitute 3 in for x because we want to evaluate the expression when x equals 3. All right? Did it have to be a 3? No, it could have been any number, but whatever number was there, we would have had to substitute in for. Okay? All right. So now, when we take a look at this, well, this should look familiar. This should be closer to what we just did on our quiz or what we were doing last week. Like, what's going on here? I have 4 parentheses 3, so we hopefully remember that that's multiplication. I also know that I have a plus 5. So if we write PEMDAS, then hopefully we remember that, we're going to have to do our multiplication first. So I'm going to multiply the 4 and the 3. I get a 12. I bring down my plus 5. So I've now performed my second step. What would we write for something like that? Well, I multiplied 4 times 3. And why did I do that? Because multiplication comes first when we have multiplication and addition. Addition. Oh my gosh, I can't spell. All right. So again, guys, if we look and we have a times and a plus, well, we know that if we follow PEMDAS, multiplication is going to come before addition. So that's why I took and did 4 times 3 before I did anything with the 5. Well, now, lastly, we should be good. What do we have here? 12 plus 5. 17. All right. So the last thing that we would do is we would add 12 to 5. And why? Because addition is the last operation in our expression. So I'll give a little bit of time. I know I wrote a lot there. Hopefully this is kind of making sense though, guys. The only difference between what we're doing now and what we did last week was that we have to make a substitution first, okay? So that's always going to be our first step. Excuse me. Okay? So when we slide down to our next problem, feel free to pause if you need to stop and write a little bit. I know I was writing kind of quick and I'm lefty, which kind of stinks for the video. But when we look at this next one, once again, we have a variable expression because there's numbers, operations, and variables. And we know that if we want to evaluate a variable expression, we must substitute for whatever value we're trying to evaluate for. Okay? So if we notice, we want to evaluate when b is equal to 4, so that means I need to replace b with 4. So I'm going to say it. Well, let's do it first, and then we'll write our explanation. So I have 7 times 5 minus, if you want, you can put this in parentheses if you want to get in the habit of doing that. But really, if it's just 5 minus b, we can just write 5 minus 4, something like that. And so when we go to write our explanation, this is going to look very similar to the one above. We substituted for b, substituted 4 for b, and we do that because we're evaluating, guys, let me rewrite that, sorry. Evaluating the expression when b equals 4. Okay, so we substitute because that's what we want b to equal. Now we can go ahead, we can do a little bit of math here. I see, parentheses. Oh, I have stuff inside of parentheses. What comes first? Multiplication or parentheses? Ooh, p, parentheses, okay? So I need to go ahead and I need to perform that operation, subtraction. So I'm going to do 5 minus 4 is 1, and then I'm going to bring everything else down with it. Okay, so now I have 7 parentheses 1. So what did we do? Well, we subtracted 4 from 5, right? We took 4 away from 5 because it was in parentheses. In parentheses comes first. All right. Well, what else do we have to do? What was this? When we have a number out in front of parentheses, we kind of said it on the one above. Hopefully we remember that this just means multiplication. So 7 times 1 is 7. That gives me my answer. Sorry, I should have boxed this one just so we had it. And now to just give a little explanation, multiplied 7 times 1. And why? Because it is our final operation. Alright, so again, feel free if you need to, pause the video, get this down, ask neighbors even if you're having some trouble, but please make sure you understand what we're doing here. We're substituting, and then we're going through order of operations. We're substituting, we're going through order of operations. So guess what we're going to do on the back? Oh, not the back, my bad. You guys have it on the back. I have it on the next sheet. We're going to do some, but we don't need to explain anymore, okay? Explanation's good, but let's just go through a couple of these and see if we can do them. Alright, so when we look at this first one, 4x squared plus 5x minus 3. Ooh, interesting. I have multiple x's, which means I'm going to have to plug in this 2 multiple times. So I'm going to actually draw an arrow to both, so I know that I need to put it in everywhere. Okay, so I'm going to have 4, and then if it's 4x squared, remember that that means it's being multiplied by x squared. Okay, all I did was replace the x with a 2. Well, now I have plus 5. Oh, 5 is also being multiplied by x, so I need to multiply that 5 by 2. And then lastly, minus 3. So now we ask, and I'm going to write it up at the top so we have it. PEMDAS. So we look. Is there anything happening inside of parentheses? No calculations or operations inside parentheses, so that's good. We can move on. How about E, exponents? Yep, there we go. We definitely have some exponents. So I'm going to have to do that step next. So I'm going to kind of make a little mark there. So I'm going to have this is a 4, and then everything else stays the same. Did you guys notice that? All I did was do the 2 squared is 4. I brought everything else down the same way. Well, now let's take a look. We have multiplication, addition, multiplication, subtraction. Ooh, multiplication, division comes before addition, subtraction, so I'm definitely looking here. And hopefully you guys remember, when we have multiple multiplications, we go left to right. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do this piece first. 4 times 4 is 16, and then once again I bring everything down. Now I have addition, multiplication, subtraction. Hopefully we remember multiplication's first. So I bring everything else down after performing 5 times 2. Okay, now I have addition, subtraction. When we have addition, subtraction, we always go left to right. So I'm going to perform this first to get me 26, bring down the negative 3, and lastly, 26 minus 3 is 23. Okay, now this would be a tough one to explain, so hopefully you guys just remember your order of operations. Exponents come first, then any multiplications, then you can move on to addition, subtraction. Cool? Alright, one more, maybe 2 more, we'll see. Okay, x equals 1, so we're going to evaluate this when x equals 1, which means I have to start by substituting in everywhere. Okay? So I have a 2, and then it's 2 times x, so really I'm going to replace that x with the times 1. And then I have, let's see here, x squared, or 1 squared, minus 1 plus 5. Alright. Now, some people do these differently. When I do these, especially because I have a fraction bar, or because I have a fraction bar, do-over. Because I have a fraction bar, I can do one thing on top and one thing on the bottom at the same time to save me some room. So that means I know when I look at the top, well, I only have one thing, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. But on the bottom, I can also say, ooh, I see exponents, so I'm going to perform that operation. So 2 times 1 is 2. My fraction bar stays the same, or division bar, I should say. 1 squared is 1, so I am going to rewrite this like that. Now, the top is done, so we're good with the top. Nothing left to do with the top for right now. I do have subtraction and addition. Hopefully you remember, we always go left to right when we're down to subtraction and addition. So I'm going to do this piece first. So 1 minus 1 is 0. Bring down the positive 5, or plus 5. And then I have my final step, 0 plus 5. So I have 2 over 5. Now, this is a perfectly good answer. If you go to your calculator, you might get a decimal, 0.4. Both are perfectly okay. Okay, I kind of lied, guys. We're going to do one more thing. I want to show you that there can be multiple variables, okay? So I'm going to do something pretty easy here, and I'm going to say we have 2x minus y. All right? When x equals 5 and y equals 3. Hopefully you guys can kind of figure this one out on your own, but I want you to understand that all you do is you substitute properly. If an x is here, well, I replace it with what x is equal to. So I substitute like that. ooh, here's a y. I need to substitute y in for y. Kind of like that. And so if I rewrite this, I know I'm going to have 2 times x, but I'm replacing x with a 5, so 2 times 5 minus whatever my y is, which is 3. So minus 3. Do you guys notice how this is basically the same thing as we did before now? Now it turns into PEMDAS, or order of operations. So I do my multiplication, and then I do my subtraction, and I now have a value for when I'm evaluating 2x minus y with x equals to 5 and y equals to 3. Okay? So, hopefully you guys are good at substituting, because that's very important here. But then really, guys, this is more just applying the order of operations. Alright? So there is video 1. Hopefully that is not too bad, and of course we will be around in the next couple of days to try and clean up any misconceptions you have. Have a good one. Peace.